There were few details of what the human cost may have been on the ground. Mr. Robertson said any figures about civilian casualties were based on Iraqi claims. Here's our defence correspondent Kevin Dunn.
The Prime Minister received an early briefing on last night's raids, in which the RAF's 12 Tornadoes flew 3 waves of attacks against Iraqi targets. Reporting on the outcome, the Defence Secretary made clear all aircraft and crew returned safely to their base in Kuwait.
12 of our aircraft flew in 3 waves of attacks, and I'm delighted that all of them returned safely. And I want here to pay a tribute to the air and ground crew at Ali Al Salem for their courage and their skill.
The Chief of the Defence Staff said all targets were of a military nature and carefully chosen.
We select our targets with great care. We've had 8 years since the Gulf War in which to identify which are Saddam's most critical capabilities. The aim is not to destroy his forces, but to cripple them by hitting these key points.
An RAF group captain then described in clinical terms cockpit video footage of several bombings. The first, an attack on a surface-to-air missile site.
You can see here now we're in the last few seconds of the attack. The navigator has identified the target there, and that is the bunker with the radar on. The rest of the SAM site can be seen around here. These are revetments where you could store missiles or where the missile launchers could be located. And there you see the penetration of the weapon and the explosion, and that radar will not be illuminating any Allied aircraft tonight.
No mention was made of any possible human casualties in the attacks, the second of which was against a radio mast.
Here you'll see the target, the compound with the mast in. This is a control building. We're going to hit the mast and try and knock that down. If you look carefully, you'll see the bombs come in from this direction and hit the target. We're also trying to destroy the fiber optic cables which would be underneath this mast as well, connecting it with the control cables. We're now in slow motion now, and if you're very careful, if you're very lucky, you'll see the bombs come in from this direction and hit the target there. This is Talil Airfield here. You can see the taxiways, and you can see hardened aircraft shelters around the site, one here and the one we're attacking here. This is a hardened aircraft shelter here. We've got a delay action on the fuse. The weapon is going to penetrate the hardened aircraft shelter. You don't see as big an explosion on this one as you had done previously. There's the explosion. What you see now is the doors blowing out at the front and the back of the hardened aircraft shelter.
Finally, the bombing of a hangar believed to contain a remotely controlled aircraft capable of delivering chemical weapons.
This is not a hardened shelter, so you get a much bigger explosion this time, and surely no aircraft in there will be flying tonight.
Mr. Robertson made clear these would not be the last attacks, though he would not be drawn on when the operation might end.
There's so much more to do before we can be satisfied that Saddam Hussein's capability to develop weapons of mass destruction or to threaten his neighbours has been damaged to the extent that is necessary, and we will carry on with our military action along with the United States until we're satisfied that Saddam's military machine has been sufficiently damaged.
The clear message then, both from the Pentagon and from Whitehall, is that the concentrated air operation against Iraq, months in the planning, is not yet over, and further attacks can be expected tonight. Kevin Dunn, ITN, at the Ministry of Defence.
Iraq is today assessing the damage of a second night of bombardment. Officials claim at least 25 people have been killed and more than 70 injured in the capital alone. Our Middle East correspondent Julian Mannion reports from Baghdad, where, like other Western journalists, he's subject to restrictions.
Another cruise missile slams into Baghdad. Last night's bombardment was more intense, and a number of the targets were in the populated center of the city. One missile blast lifted our cameraman off his feet. This morning I went to the site of those explosions. No pictures are allowed, and I'm not permitted to say where it is. What I can say is that the target building was a well-known part of Iraq's military-industrial complex. It was hit with great precision, appearing at first sight almost intact. but in fact wrecked from the inside and with its roof blown off. In front of it, a statue of Saddam Hussein is completely untouched. The only problem from the Allied point of view is that the building is widely believed to have been empty for some time. A hospital near one of the missile strikes suffered minor damage. Iraqi officials are showing journalists wounded civilians they say were hurt in the bombing. The government says that so far 30 people have been killed and about 100 wounded in Baghdad. Figures for the rest of the country are not yet available. At Friday prayers, the priest called on other Arab nations to support their Iraqi brothers, but that is a forlorn hope. The dream of Arab solidarity has been destroyed as comprehensively as the targets of the Allied air campaign. Julian Mannion, ITN, Baghdad.